D. $160 F, equivalent to over $71 C. That's not the temperature inside an industrial incinerator. That's the temperature of the asphalt pavement on a typical Phoenix street at noon. At this temperature, if you trip and can't get up, your flesh will be permanently destroyed, right down to the bone, in less than 10 minutes. Last summer, doctors at the Arizona Burn Center treated hundreds of patients with injuries that looked like they'd just stepped out of an explosion, not a walk. Mainstream media and 7 p.m. news constantly tell you it's just a record-breaking heat wave, a summer inconvenience, and that you can just stay indoors and turn on the air conditioning. They call it extreme weather. But the harsh truth that no government supercomputer model wants to admit: this isn't the weather. This is the systemic collapse of urban civilization. Phoenix isn't experiencing a heat wave. It's being reclaimed by the desert. You think this tragedy is confined to a desert valley and has nothing to do with your family? Look again. The technological shield keeping you safe anywhere in America is just as fragile. Millions of people are entrusting their lives to dwindling water pipes and an aging power grid groaning under the weight of a massive heat dome. In Phoenix, air conditioning isn't a comfort, it's a lifeline. Power outages aren't darkness, they're a mass casualty event. What will fail first? The limits of the human body's endurance, the evaporating water supply, or the power system keeping 5 million people alive? Stay tuned until the end of the video, because I'm going to reveal the most brutal scientific scenario for the day this heat fortress officially shuts down. A 2050 secret that urban planners don't want you to know. To understand the extent of the risk we face, you must strip away the flowery advertising of real estate corporations and confront a core geographical truth. Phoenix never truly conquered the desert. It merely evades nature's wrath within a giant man-made bubble. Over 5 million people live in a place where the average annual rainfall is less than 8 inches. The existence of this metropolis doesn't depend on Mother Nature's favor. It's forcibly sustained by 3 life support systems: air conditioning, concrete structures for a car culture, and water piped from afar. Air conditioning transforms the deadly atmosphere into a tolerable environment within 4 walls. But in return, it ties the lives of millions to a fragile power grid. Cars allow residents to move safely between their personal cooling boxes, but they turn the city's surface into a fiery inferno of asphalt that absorbs solar radiation, and the vast aqueduct from the Colorado River allows green lawns to sprout in barren land. But it puts the city in perpetual borrowing of resources from a dwindling future. 20th century urban planners gambled the lives of future generations on a deadly mistake. They believed that technology could overcome all of nature's limitations. But they failed to foresee the phenomenon of urban heat island. Phoenix isn't just hot because of the sun. It's hot because of the way it was built. Every technology that once propelled this city's rapid growth is now, under the pressure of extreme weather and massive heat domes, its Achilles heel. The protective shield of concrete and machinery is cracking. But the truth is, before the grid is overloaded, before the reservoirs completely evaporate, the first line of defense to break is not the infrastructure, not the highways or the power turbines. The first line of defense is the biological limits of the human body. And in this gradually melting artificial bubble, our bodies, nature's most perfect weapon for survival, are being forced to confront an environment where the laws of physics no longer allow them to prevail. The human body is a highly sophisticated thermoregulator. When the surrounding environment heats up, we sweat. Evaporation removes heat, helping to maintain a safe core temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. But in Phoenix, with outdoor temperatures stuck at 115 degrees Fahrenheit, 46 degrees Celsius, combined with the urban heat island effect, this perfect biological system begins to malfunction and collapse. When overheating, the heart has to pump blood frantically to the skin's surface to release heat. The kidneys work tirelessly to try and retain the little water remaining. If the water lost through evaporation isn't replenished quickly, the blood thickens. The immense workload on the cardiovascular system becomes overwhelming, slowly eroding the body's living cells. Heat stroke doesn't kill instantly with a violent impact like a storm or earthquake. It kills through systemic exhaustion from deep within. When core temperatures exceed 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius, the blood-brain barrier is severely damaged, causing disorientation. Brain cells begin to swell. The liver, kidneys, and intestines suffer localized oxygen deprivation, leading to multiple organ failure. The end often comes in utter silence as the heart beats its last weak beats before stopping forever. What makes Phoenix a ruthless killing machine is not just the peak daytime temperatures, but the inescapable grip of the night. The human body has evolved to recover at night when temperatures drop, but in this concrete urban core, nighttime temperatures are consistently locked above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. The body never gets to rest. It must fight constantly. Young children, the elderly, and outdoor workers will be the first to fall. In a hurricane, humans can easily find shelter. We can hide behind sturdy walls. But in an extreme heat wave, the enemy doesn't stand outside the door. It seeps through every crack, straight into the bloodstream, into the heartbeat, into the brain, and slowly overwhelms the body's defenses from within. This isn't simply uncomfortable heat. This is biologically incapacitating heat. However, in Phoenix, the cruelty doesn't just descend from the sky or linger in the air. The real danger lurks in a far more insidious place. It lies right beneath our feet, waiting for a moment of carelessness to turn a seemingly harmless stumble into a brutal death sentence on the streets. The great empire of Phoenix was built on a deadly foundation: asphalt. To fuel the illusion of a perfect automotive city, humans carpeted thousands of square miles of desert with black asphalt. They inadvertently created the largest solar radiation receiver and amplifier ever to exist on Earth. When the media warned of air temperatures reaching 115 degrees Fahrenheit, they overlooked half the cruelest truth. The air you breathe isn't the only thing heating up. Solar radiation hitting the pavement doesn't disappear. The dark surface absorbs up to 95% of the energy, pushing ground temperatures to unimaginable levels. On a summer afternoon in the heart of Phoenix, the asphalt pavement easily reaches 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 82 degrees Celsius. At this extreme heat, the biological structure of human skin begins to denature and decompose instantly. Imagine you're an elderly person staggering, or a worker exhausted from heat stroke, and you slip and fall. You don't fall to the ground. You fall into a giant frying pan. In less than 10 minutes of direct contact, you'll suffer third-degree burns that penetrate deep into muscle and bone. The tissue necrosis occurs so rapidly that the victim doesn't even have time to cry for help before the nerves are completely destroyed. This is not a fictional scenario. In the summer of 2023, the Arizona Burn Center was overwhelmed with hundreds of emergency cases sharing a common cause: collapses in the streets. More than a third of their ICU beds were filled with victims disfigured not by fires, but by urban infrastructure. Painful skin graft surgeries dragged on, and many were left with devastating permanent disabilities. A city that once proclaimed the pinnacle of civilization now possesses roads as deadly as the surface of a leaking furnace. If an accidental stumble can instantly become a death sentence. Imagine the tragic fate of those homeless, forced to survive every second on this hellish surface. When the thermometer readings exceed the survival threshold, extreme heat ceases to be a weather phenomenon. It transforms into a ruthless sorting machine, claiming lives based on infrastructure inequality. The first victims of this machine are the thousands left stranded on the red-hot pavements of Phoenix. It's a common misconception that a flimsy tarp or shack can provide temporary shelter from the sun's fury. The truth is quite the opposite. These makeshift shacks on concrete are not shelters, they are solar furnaces. The tarp doesn't block radiation, and traps the hot air inside. Temperatures inside a closed shack at midday can easily exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 degrees Celsius. Dehydration occurs rapidly. Stagnant air depletes oxygen, pushing weakened bodies into deadly heat stroke within minutes. The cruelty of this urban system doesn't just target the homeless. It ensnares anyone who doesn't own an air-conditioned car. Look at the desolate bus stops amidst the concrete wasteland, without roofs, trees, or water. In Phoenix, public transportation seems never to have been designed as a survival infrastructure. Dozens of people have collapsed and died on bus benches, their exposure to ultraviolet radiation exceeding the limits their cardiovascular systems can withstand. In a normal city, shade might just be a landscape amenity. But in Phoenix, shade is the brutal line between life and death. This urban environment has deprived the most vulnerable groups of their chance of recovery. They are exposed continuously, day after day, until their internal organs are completely exhausted. But the tragedy doesn't stop outside the streets. Do you think that simply having a roof over your head and a closed door is enough to keep you safe? The truth is, in Phoenix, surviving the summer is measured in bills, and not everyone can afford them. For those who own a modern home, a personal car, and a high-walled office, summer in Phoenix is simply an inconvenience. They move from one air-conditioned space to another, completely isolated from the desert's fury. But for hundreds of thousands of low-income households, the extreme heat wave isn't the weather. It's a devastating financial crisis. In this valley, the coolness has stripped away its veneer of comfort to reveal its true nature, a cruel survival privilege. When outdoor temperatures are locked at 115 degrees Fahrenheit, the old air conditioners in the dilapidated apartment buildings are forced to work beyond their design capacity. They consume enormous amounts of electricity just to keep the air inside from turning into a furnace. Each month, the electricity bill plummets like a hanging sentence. Many poor families are forced into a cruel choice: pay for electricity to continue breathing cool air, or spend that money on food for their children. As a result, they are forced to turn their thermostats to dangerously high levels, or simply cool a small room and keep the doors and windows closed. Even more horrifying, a quarter of heat-related deaths in Maricopa County occur inside these closed homes. Many victims are elderly people living alone. When cooling systems suddenly fail, or when the electricity is cut off due to unpaid bills, they are trapped in their airtight apartments with no ventilation. Room temperatures skyrocket to deadly levels in just a few hours. They die in silent solitude, their bodies only discovered days later. Even children are deprived of a part of their childhood. Schools are forced to cancel all outdoor activities. The once vibrant, laughter-filled metal playground has transformed into a dangerous, scorching trap, exposed to merciless ultraviolet radiation. Whether you reside in a luxurious mansion or struggle in a slum, all this concrete, air-conditioned, and cool water shield depends on a single lifeline, a fragile line between life and death, where mass catastrophe awaits if the flow of electrons suddenly ceases. The sound of millions of air conditioners tearing through the silent night in Phoenix is not merely mechanical noise. It's the frantic breathing of a metropolis struggling to survive. When outdoor temperatures peak, all 5 million residents retreat into their sealed concrete boxes and push cooling capacity to maximum. It is precisely at this moment, when the line between survival and extinction is thinnest, that the city's energy demand reaches its limit. The Arizona power grid is under unprecedented pressure to prevent complete collapse. But what happens if this lifeline is severed? Scientists at the Georgia Institute of Technology ran a simulation of the most catastrophic scenario: a 2.5-day widespread power outage coinciding with the heat dome engulfing the entire Salt River Valley. The simulation results depicted not just an infrastructure disaster, it outlined a mass casualty event on an unprecedented scale. Without air conditioning, houses sealed in insulation instantly become deadly heat traps. Temperatures inside will soar above 100 degrees Fahrenheit within hours. depriving the human body of its physiological defenses. Hundreds of thousands of people, especially the elderly, young children, and patients with underlying health conditions, will simultaneously suffer from heat stroke. Medical centers, nursing homes, and emergency cooling stations will collapse under the massive influx of patients. Backup power will never be enough to maintain the air conditioning system for a burning metropolis. Death will then spread, not through viruses or smoke, but through invisible heat. We have locked ourselves in a perfect survival machine, yet handed the key to our fate to an increasingly dilapidated and powerless grid facing the new limits of this extreme era. However, providing electricity only solves half of humanity's survival problem here, because a city rising in the heart of a barren desert needs more than just energy for cooling. To keep this civilization from turning into dust and ruins, it also craves another core resource for true survival. Phoenix wasn't built on concrete, steel, and crisscrossing highway networks. This entire magnificent empire was constructed on a blind belief that cool, flowing water would never stop. Nestled in the driest desert region of North America, this metropolis couldn't possibly sustain tens of thousands of people, let alone 5 million. Its rapid expansion was a feat of engineering, but also a deadly ecological illusion, borrowing water from afar to deceive nature. Phoenix's life is tied to the flow of the Colorado River and the vast network of canals known as the Arizona Central Project. For over half a century, this multi-billion-dollar system has pumped the lifeblood of a surreal dream. It provides more than just basic drinking water. Billions of gallons are pumped daily to maintain lush green lawns in the desert, irrigate luxury golf courses, fill private swimming pools, and power intensive agriculture. This borrowed water has inflated the real estate bubble, fueling endless suburban expansion. But this vital lifeline is evaporating before our eyes. The Colorado River is not simply experiencing a temporary drought. Scientists call this permanent desertification. The river's flow has decreased by more than 20% since 2000. Lake Mead, the massive artificial reservoir that regulates the entire Southwest, is now just a dwindling funnel. The stark white limestone belts etched into the cliffs surrounding the lake are a silent indictment, marking the permanent disappearance of vast amounts of water from the area. In this fierce gamble for survival resources, Arizona holds a deadly card: the right to access secondary water. Whenever the Colorado River's water level drops to critical levels, Arizona will be the first state to suffer the most merciless cuts. Intensive agriculture has been cut off from water, and now the scythe of limitations is aimed directly at new urban projects. While the cool water still flowed, Phoenix could confidently market its dream of a suburban paradise in the desert. But when the illusion is shattered, that dream begins to leave behind empty, desolate, and eerily lonely roads. Drive to the outskirts of Phoenix, and you'll encounter a haunting scene straight out of a post-apocalyptic movie. Brand new asphalt roads wind through the desert. Streetlights stand tall and silent, waiting. Underground sewer systems and modern model homes have been erected, but there's not a soul in sight. This isn't a consequence of the financial crisis. These ghostly settlements were abandoned before they even began, because a crucial, intangible resource has been completely depleted: groundwater. For decades, urban planners and investors have treated the groundwater beneath the Sonora Desert like an unlimited credit card. They relentlessly expanded cities based on the belief that simply drilling deeper would yield water. But the groundwater here is an ancient fossil. It took tens of thousands of years to accumulate through the cracks in the barren rock. Human exploitation is far exceeding the natural regeneration capacity by hundreds of times. The water level has plummeted dramatically, creating permanent geological damage. A red line has been broken as Arizona authorities have frozen numerous permits for new residential developments in the suburbs. The reason is brutal. developers cannot demonstrate a guaranteed water supply for the next 100 years. The model of suburban expansion has now become a death trap. Building thousands of homes in the desert consumes not only millions of gallons of water, but also countless miles of radiation-absorbing asphalt, forcing air conditioners to work frantically and dealing a fatal blow to the already struggling power grid. The ghost towns standing isolated in the sandstorms are not simply the economic failures of blind projects. They are giant tombstones marking the absolute limits of nature. Phoenix's question now isn't how to survive today, but whether the city can survive 30 or 50 years from now. An empty slum in the desert is irrefutable evidence that we are exploiting nature faster than it can sustain life. And as the flow of life is squeezed, this metropolis not only faces a deadly thirst, but it also permanently loses its last remaining defense against the destructive heat of the desert: trees and shade. When water resources dwindle, a cruel choice begins. In a city designed to cater to automotive culture, massive concrete pavements and parking lots take precedence over human life. Phoenix is a perfect heat trap. Enormous amounts of asphalt absorb solar radiation during the day and release it slowly at night, creating an urban heat island effect that stifles all attempts at cooling. The city is deprived of its ability to cool itself. To combat this effect, the only natural weapon is trees and shade. But trees need water to survive, creating a bloody survival paradox in the heart of a barren desert. Shade in Phoenix is not a landscape amenity or urban aesthetic. At biologically critical temperatures, shade is the ultimate survival infrastructure. It creates the fragile line between reversible heat stroke and fatal heat stroke. However, this kind of survival infrastructure is distributed based on the cruel injustice of economic power. Look at the city's temperature map, and you'll see it perfectly matches the income map. In wealthy neighborhoods, underground irrigation systems nourish lush, ancient canopies of trees, creating microclimatic oases that reduce temperatures by as much as 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, in low-income neighborhoods, people are trapped in labyrinths of concrete, metal, and asphalt that absorb heat. Those without cars are forced to walk or wait for hours under sheltered bus stops. The air they breathe is heated from the sky down to the ground. Extreme nature has no eyes, but its devastation is incredibly precise. It strikes fatally at those deprived of the right to stand in the shade. However, this is not the first time a civilization in the Salt River Valley has gambled its fate on its ability to control nature. Thousands of years before glass and steel skyscrapers rose, the Salt River Valley was the center of an ancient civilization. The Hohokam people lived here and established a thriving agricultural empire in the heart of the harsh desert. They were master engineers, creating an incredibly complex system of canals stretching for hundreds of miles to channel the scarce water resources that sustained their community. They conquered the desert, or at least they once believed. But today, all that remains of that empire are archaeological ruins lying silently beneath the asphalt of modern Phoenix. The decline of the Hohokam remains a hotly debated mystery, but one fact is certain: prolonged superdroughts and the relentless pressure of resource depletion played a fatal role in shattering their social structure. History doesn't pronounce that modern Phoenix is doomed, but it leaves a chilling warning. Technology can prolong life, but it can never erase the limits of nature. Water is always the ultimate limit. The parallels between the past and the present are chilling. The Hohokam relied on a network of clay canals. We are complacent with reinforced concrete pipelines. We have air conditioning, supercomputers, and cutting-edge technology. But we are also trapping millions of lives in barren land with consumption demands thousands of times greater than our ancestors. The founders of the city proudly named it Phoenix, the mythical phoenix rising from the ashes. But if water resources dry up, heat exceeds biological limits, and the power grid collapses, that proud name could become a tragic paradox. The question of Phoenix's survival doesn't lie in the past. It lies in the near future, a future where man-made protective layers begin to crack under the pressures of nature. Climate forecasts for 2050 paint a grim scenario. Extreme temperatures will be the new normal. Phoenix may weather a harsh summer. But the real risk is a chain reaction of collapse. Imagine a heat dome stuck in the sky, reservoirs drying up, and power grids shutting down. Millions trapped in concrete heat traps, hospitals overwhelmed, nights no longer cool. It's the death crossroads every supercomputer fears. To survive, Phoenix must abandon the grandiose illusions of the 20th century. The model of suburban expansion, endless asphalt paving, and borrowed water is obsolete. The city must restructure. Shade is a core survival infrastructure, not a utility. Reflective materials, cooling stations, and groundwater discipline must be established. Above all, the lives of the poor and homeless cannot continue to be considered an acceptable secondary loss. Nature has sent a chilling message through every meter. Groundwater levels are dwindling, and electricity bills are sky high. The pioneers once proudly called this place Phoenix, the phoenix rising from the ashes. But in this age of extremism, the question is no longer whether the city can be reborn from the firestorm. The most devastating question is, can we change quickly enough before the heat, thirst, and darkness push this desert dream to its limits?